Greetings and felicitations to one and all gathered here today.
Maybe one day the word refugee will be something of the past, and maybe 83 years from now, someone will be standing in front of a group of people like you and will recall how, in 2022, like 1939, a community came together to welcome and assist people who fled repression and violence, prejudice and war, ignorance and hatred, and showed them understanding, acceptance, and kindness.
I think the thing that struck me first was the enormous goodwill and humanity of the people of Gloucester who got involved, and they came about from all sorts of directions. It included the mayor, it included church people, it included a number of women's organisations. They got together, they had a public meeting in February 1939 when the Kindertransport was starting. You know, what can we do to help? And within a month they'd raised nearly £300, which was a lot of money for those days. They were also went out and talked to other organisations in Oxford and in Bath for advice about what to do. And they also contacted something called the Central Committee for Refugees in London and got advice for them. And in very short order, they raised enough money and got a promise of an overdraft from the bank so they could buy 18 Alexandra Road and set it up as a hostel. It was really, I think, both the enormous humanity on their part and the very considerable speed with which, with which they acted to get things done. It wasn't so difficult to place the older girls, the 12 to 15-year-old girls, because I think they were thought of as being more useful domestically and less likely to be troublesome. But older boys were more difficult, and the idea at a fairly early stage was to raise money to either rent or buy a house and to set up a hostel for 10 boys.
And so, as part of the deal to come to England, to be accepted into England, my grandparents took on the role of a hostel, a refugee hostel for Kindertransport children in Gloucester. This is something that they would have been extremely happy to do. They were generous people. My grandmother in particular was very, very kind. She had a very strong emotional side to her. And she would have felt grateful, proud and happy to look after children whose lives, frankly, had been turned upside down. Paul would have been a little harder, a more traditional father at the time. He would have been perhaps a little more distant, but he would have provided the discipline and the support that many of the children would have needed. My grandmother, though, was an excellent cook. She would have provided the children there with the sort of food that they would have recognised and that would have perhaps reminded them of home. And I'm sure that my grandmother especially would have provided them with the motherly care that they would have appreciated. Now, many of these children didn't see their parents again. And at least for a couple of years, they would have had Edith as their mother, and I'm sure they would have appreciated her efforts.
Dad came to this country with just one suitcase and very little, but that hostel was a start for him making a good life for himself in this country. Originally he hadn't hoped to stay here, he'd hoped to go to the States to join family there, but he ended up staying in this country, and he was able to make a very good life for himself, his wife and us, his two girls. He made sure that we weren't short of anything, and we were very proud of him when, through the work that he did, he was awarded the MBE, and it was when we're at Buckingham Palace, when I really thought he came to this country as a refugee, came to this country with nothing, and look what he's achieved. And from nothing he achieved so much. And I just felt so proud of him at that time, how he'd overcome so much hardship, overcome losing his parents, and was just so confident in what he did, and everybody respected him. And I couldn't be more proud of what my dad had achieved. And I think the blue plaque that's being made for the hostel in Gloucester is kind of a tribute to what Gloucester offered these boys, the start that they were able to give for these boys, or a new start for these boys. And so many of them were able to live, well, they all got married, all lived good lives, some in this country, some in the States. But they were able to make something of their lives because of that start they were given here. And that plaque is just a way of showing that, a way of remembering that it wasn't just a boys' home, an orphanage, it was something special for those boys.
Hi, I'm Pete. I'm the production manager at Alexandra Architectural in Duffels, Derbyshire. This is where the plaque is created. This area is a pattern shop. We use a flexo print, which is a lithographized rubber. It's mounted onto a backing board where it's trimmed, cut to the size. It's a little bit bigger because with the metal contract, so we have to make it 4% bigger. Alex is going to be putting this together. We'll stick the print onto the backing plate, get it prepared for casting, and then it'll go next door into the foundry. And now we're in the foundry. This is where the plaque gets moulded. It'll be moulded in an air set sand, CO2 sand, which is a fine silica sand bonded with a catalyzing agent. The sand solidifies and then will be cast similar to this one from the furnace just about here.
Dad's journey to England was a little different from the other boys in the home in Gloucester. Dad came to England on the 4th transport out of Berlin, but it didn't bring him direct to England. He was in Holland and Eindhoven for a few months. He left Berlin, last time he saw his parents, on the 4th of January in 1939. And he landed in Holland and stayed in a home there until he came to England eventually on the 14th of April. The reason he came to England is because his parents, when they were married, were only married under Jewish law, under Jewish rights. His father had left the place, the Hillel in Poland. He'd left there to avoid going into the army, and that meant that he was declared stateless. And so he didn't have a passport, he couldn't travel. But it also meant that his mother had to keep her own nationality, so his mother was Polish. And that meant that at that stage, Dad was also declared Polish, even though he was born in Berlin. That had positive effects because at the beginning of the war, or before the war started, the British government had decided that they would take Polish children from Holland, and that's how Dad came to come over. And it's true that many of the people that stayed behind in Holland actually eventually lost their lives, so that helped Dad to survive. When he came to England, Dad first of all went to Barnham House, and it was at that point he was selected to go to the home in Gloucester. He wasn't one of the first people to get selected. In fact, he was one of the backup people, if you like. We discovered later on he wasn't on the original list, but he didn't know any of that at the time, and he went to Gloucester. When he was in Gloucester, Dad shared a room with Werner Zorich and with Walter Kolpeck, and in fact we still have a dictionary that's got Walter Kolpeck's name in it. So I can only assume that either Walter gave it to Dad, or in the confusion of clearing up the rooms, Dad ended up with it. But he's had it all his life. It's what I used to do in my German lessons at school, and we've still got it here now. Many of Dad's family have Stolpersteine in Berlin. Stolpersteine are stones that started off as a sort of art project by Gunter Daring, and he laid these stones many years ago now, but the idea, if you like, caught on, and they're now organised as a memorial to Jewish people that lost their lives during the war, and they spread far outside Berlin, and Poland and other places also do it now as well. But we applied for the Stolpersteine for Dad's parents about 4 or 5 years ago now, but there's such a waiting list that in fact they're due to be laid Stolpersteine for his mother Liebe and for his father Isaac, and also for his aunt, who he called Helena, but in actual fact her name was Hudis. And they're due to be laid in Berlin on the 5th of April this year, and that will be, we hope, quite a significant thing. It was something that Dad wanted, and we're just sorry that he's not here to see it.
I can't even begin to describe what it means to me. I mean, it's the culmination of 3 years' work. But more than that, it's the beginning of something that's a lifetime. Because as long as that plaque is up, as long as that building is up, people will know what happened there. And my feeling is it was in danger of being lost. People walked by, they didn't know what 18 Alexandra Road was. They didn't know what happened there. They were forgetting that the Kindertransport happened. And by putting that plaque there, it allows people not just to know, but the QR code allows them to learn what happened there and to know that this bit of history actually happened in their backyard. And that to me is so incredibly important. And just the turnout today, I feel so welcome in Gloucester. I think it would be trite to say I feel at home, but I sort of feel at home. You know, people are so kind and so nice and so warm and welcoming and open that, you know, coming back here just would be a no-brainer for me. And I can't wait to some point to bring my family back here and show this to them.
Well, today was very special, very different than the last time we were here. The last time we were here, we followed my father's whole journey as a child from what was Breslau and is now Poland to Gloucester. And this time we're focused on Gloucester and the gratefulness that I feel for this country and this town for making my father who he was and saving his life, since none of his family has survived. And so, you know, seeing Alexandra Road, which we did see last time, and knowing that that's where he lived when he first came. And last night we had the honor of meeting the grandson of the family that he lived with after the hostel. And it's just so special, and it was such a pleasure to see so many people that came out to this event, because I wouldn't have thought anyone would. But it's important because people, it was brought up so many times today, how relevant it is today as it was 83 years ago. So, you know, It's unfortunate that that's where we're at, but that is where we're at.
So my overriding memories, I think, of my grandparents were two people who were very caring, very kind, but above all, I think, very grateful to the city, to the people of Gloucester, for the chance to start again. Many of their friends and relatives didn't make it. They didn't make it across the water to England. They didn't have that second opportunity. And I think there was a realisation, most certainly, that the work of the Gloucester Association for Aiding Refugees most definitely saved their lives, to the Cullis family for their efforts in ensuring that my grandparents, my uncle, my father were able to come here. And in that respect, a huge amount of gratitude to them, to the people of Gloucester.
The archive has allowed a great story to continue. It's a very interesting story historically. It's a very human story. It reflects enormous credit on the good people of Gloucester. And it was, for those involved, in the end, a matter of life and death. And you can't say really more than that.
So now we unveil this plaque, not just to remember the 10 boys, Walter Kolpeck, Gunter Meyer, Ivan Malarski, Julius Malarski, Peter Nebenzahl, Kurt Reimann, Robert Chusitsky, Arnold Ullman, Harry Vorgang, and Werner Zorek. Not just to remember Paul and Edith Arnstein, and not just to remember Daisy Hall and Ethel Hartland, but to remember and show appreciation to Gloucester, whose warmth and welcoming nature we honor today. On behalf of the friends and families of the Gloucester Hostel, I thank you.